So I guess we should talk about what we can do about this.
There's this thing that happens in this conversation, which is that people, they just feel kind of gutted, and they feel like once you see it clearly, if you do see it clearly, what often happens is people feel like there's nothing that we can do. And I think there's this trade where like either you're not really aware of all of this, and then you just think about the positives, but you're not really facing the situation. Or if you do face the situation, you do take it on as real, then you feel powerless. And there's like a third position that I want people to stand from, which is to take on the truth of the situation and then to stand from agency about what are we going to do to change the current path that we're on.
I think that's a very astute observation, because that is typically where I get to once we've discussed the sort of context and the history, and we've talked about the current incentive structure. I do arrive at a point where I go, generally, I think incentives win out, and there's this geographical race. There's a national race, company to company. There's a huge corporate incentive. The incentives are so strong. It's happening right now. It's moving so quickly. The people that make the laws have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what an Instagram story is, let alone what a large language model or a transformer is. And so without adults in the room, as you say, then we're heading in one direction, and there's really nothing we can do. Like there's really, the only thing that I wonder is, well, if enough people are aware of the issue,
yes,
and then enough people are given something clear, a clear step that they can take,
yes,
then maybe they'll apply pressure,
yes,
and the pressure is a big incentive which will change society, because presidents and prime ministers don't want to lose their power.
Yep.
They don't want to be thrown out.
Yep.
Neither do senates and everybody else in government. So maybe that's the route. But I'm never able to get to the point where the first action is clear and where it's united. For the person listening at home, I often ask, when I have these conversations about AI, I often ask the guests, I say, so if someone's at home, what can they do?
Yeah.
It's a lot I've thrown at you, but I'm sure you can handle it.
So social media, let's just take that as a different example, because people look at that and they say it's hopeless. Like there's nothing that we could do. This is just inevitable. This is just what happens when you connect people on the internet. But imagine if you asked me like, so what happened after the social dilemma? I'd be like, oh, well, we obviously solved the problem. Like we weren't going to allow that to continue happening. So we realized that the problem was the business model of maximizing eyeballs and engagement. We changed the business model. There was a lawsuit, a big tobacco-style lawsuit for the trillions of dollars of damage that social media had caused to the social fabric, from mental health costs to lost productivity of society, to all of these, to democracy's backsliding. And that lawsuit mandated design changes across how all this technology worked to go against and reverse all of the problems of that engagement-based business model. We had dopamine emission standards, just like we have car emission standards for cars. So now when using technology, we turned off things like autoplay and infinite scrolling. So now using your phone, you didn't feel dysregulated. We replaced the division-seeking algorithms of social media with ones that rewarded unlikely consensus or bridging. So instead of rewarding division entrepreneurs, we rewarded bridging entrepreneurs. There was a simple rule that cleaned up all the problems with technology and children, which is that Silicon Valley was only allowed to ship products that their own children used for 8 hours a day. Because today, people don't let their kids use social media. We changed the way we train engineers and computer scientists. So to graduate from any engineering school, you had to actually comprehensively study all the places that humanity had gotten technology wrong, including forever chemicals or leaded gasoline, which dropped 1 billion points of IQ, or social media that caused all these problems. So now we were graduating a whole new generation of responsible technologists, where even to graduate, you had to have a Hippocratic oath, just like they have the white lab coat and the white lab coat ceremony for doctors, where you swear to Hippocratic oath, do no harm. We changed dating apps and the whole swiping industrial complex so that all these dating app companies had to sort of put aside that whole swiping industrial complex and instead use their resources to host events in every major city every week, where there was a place to go where they matched and told you where all your other matches were going to go and meet. So now instead of feeling scarcity around meeting other people, you felt a sense of abundance, because every week there was a place where you could go and meet people you were actually excited about and attracted to. And it turned out that once people were in healthier relationships, about 20% of the polarization online went down. And we obviously changed the ownership structure of these companies from being maximizing shareholder value to instead more like public benefit corporations that were about maximizing some kind of benefit because they had taken over the societal commons. We realized that when software was eating the world, we were also eating core life support systems of society. So when software ate children's development, we needed to mandate that you had to care and protect children's development. When you ate the information environment, you had to care for and protect the information environment. We removed the reply button, so you couldn't requote and then dunk on people, so that dunking on people wasn't a core feature of social media. That reduced a lot of the polarization. We had the ability to disconnect comprehensively throughout all these platforms. So you could say, I want to go offline for a week. And all of your services were all about respecting that and making it easy for you to disconnect for a while. And when you came back, summarized all the news that you missed and told people that you were away for a little while and out of office messages and all this stuff. So now you're using your phone. You don't feel dysregulated by dopamine hijacks. You use dating apps and you feel an abundant sense of connectivity and possibility. You use use children's applications for children, and it's all built by people who have their own children use it for 8 hours a day. You use social media, and instead of seeing all these examples of pessimism and conflict, you see optimism and shared values over and over and over again. And that started to change the whole psychology of the world from being pessimistic about the world to feeling agency and possibility about the world. And so there's all these little changes that if you change the economic structures and incentives, if you put harms on balance sheets with the litigation, if you change the design choices that gave us the world that we're living in, you can live in a very different world with technology and social media that is actually about protecting the social fabric. None of those things are impossible.
How do they become likely?
Clarity. If after the social dilemma, and everyone saw the problem, everyone saw, oh my God, this business model is tearing society apart. But we, frankly, at that time, just speaking personally, we weren't ready to sort of channel the impact of that movie into, here's all these very concrete things we can do. And I will say, for as much as many of the things I described have not happened, a bunch of them are underway. We are seeing that there are, I think, 40 attorneys general in the United States that have sued Meta and Instagram for intentionally addicting children. This is just like the big tobacco lawsuits of the 1990s that led to the comprehensive changes in how cigarettes were labeled, in age restrictions, in the $100 million a year that still to this day goes to advertising to tell people about the dangers of, smoking kills people. And imagine that if we have $100 million a year going to inoculating the population about cigarettes because of how much harm that caused, we would have at least an order of magnitude more public funding coming out of this $1 trillion lawsuit going into inoculating people from the effects of social media. And we're seeing the success of people like Jonathan Haidt and his book, The Anxious Generation. We're seeing schools go phone free. We're seeing laughter return to the hallways. We're seeing Australia ban social media use for kids under 16. So this can go in a different direction if people are clear about the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think people feel hesitant because they don't want to be a Luddite. They don't want to be anti-technology. And this is important because we're not anti-technology, we're anti-inhumane toxic technology governed by toxic incentives. We're pro-technology, anti-toxic incentives.
So what can the person listening to this conversation right now do to help steer this technology to a better outcome?
Let me collect myself for a second. So there's obviously what can they do about social media and versus what can they do about AI, and we still haven't covered the AI.
The AI part I'm referring to,
Yeah. On the social media part, it's having the most powerful people who understand and who are in charge of regulating and governing this technology understand the social dilemma, see the film, to take those examples that I just laid out. If everybody who's in power, who governs technology, if all the world's leaders saw that little narrative of all the things that could happen to change how this technology was designed, and they agreed, I think people would be radically in support of those moves. We're seeing already, again, the book, The Anxious Generation, has just mobilized parents and schools across the world because everyone is facing this. Every household is facing this. And it would be possible if everybody watching this sent that clip to the 10 most powerful people that they know, and then asked them to send it to the 10 most powerful people that they know. I mean, I think sometimes I say it's like your role is not to solve the whole problem, but to be part of the collective immune system of humanity against this bad future that nobody wants. And if you can help spread those antibodies by spreading that clarity about both this is a bad path and there are interventions that get us on a better path, if everybody did that, not just for themselves and changing how I use technology, but reaching up and out for how everybody uses the technology, that would be possible.
And for AI? Is it this? The
Well, obviously I can come with, obviously I re-architected the entire economic system and I'm ready to tell, no, I'm kidding. I hear Sam Altman has room in his bunker. But.
Well, I did ask Sam Altman if he would come on my podcast, and because it seems like he's doing podcasts every week, and he doesn't want to come on.
Really?
He doesn't want to come on.
Interesting.
We've asked him for 2 years now, and I think this guy might be swerving me a little bit, and I do wonder why.
What do you think is the reason why?
What do I think the reason is? If I was to guess, I would guess that either him or his team just don't want to have this conversation. I mean, that's like a very simple way of saying it. And then you could posit why that might be. But they just don't want to have this conversation for whatever reason. And I mean, my point of view is
and
always
the reason
to
why
understand.
is because they don't have a good answer for where this all goes. If they have this particular conversation, they can distract and talk about all the amazing benefits, which are all real, by the way.
100%. I honestly, I'm investing in those benefits. So I live in this weird state of contradiction, which if you research me in the things I invest in, I will appear to be such a contradiction. But I think like you said, it is possible to hold two things to be true at the same time.
Exactly.
That AI is going to radically improve so many things on planet Earth and lift children out of poverty through education and democratizing education, whatever it might be, and curing cancer. But at the same time, there's this other unintended consequence. Everything in life is a trade-off. And if this podcast has taught me anything, it's that if you're unaware of one side of the trade-off, you could be in serious trouble. So if someone says to you that this supplement or drug is fantastic and it will change your life, the first question should be, what trade am I making? If I take testosterone, what trade am I making? And so I think of the same with this technology. I want to be clear on the trade, because the people that are in power of this technology, they very, very rarely speak to the trade.
That's right.
It's against their incentives.
That's right.
So,
because social media did give us many benefits, but at the cost of systemic polarization, breakdown of shared reality, and the most anxious and depressed generation in history, that systemic effect is not worth the trade of, it's not, again, no social media. It's a differently designed social media that doesn't have the externalities. What is the problem? We have private profit and then public harm. The harm lands on the balance sheet of society. It doesn't land on the balance sheet of the companies.
And it takes time to see the harm. This is why
and the companies exploit that. And every time we saw it with cigarettes, with fossil fuels, with asbestos, with forever chemicals, with social media, the formula is always the same. Immediately print money on the product that's driving a lot of growth, hide the harm, deny it, do fear, uncertainty, doubt political campaigns that sow merchants of doubt, propaganda that makes people doubt whether the consequences are real. Say, we'll do a study. We'll know in 10 years whether social media did harm kids. They did all of those things. But we don't have that time with AI, and B, you can actually know a lot of those harms if you know the incentive. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, said, if you show me the incentive, and I will show you the outcome. If you know the incentive, which is for these companies with AI, to race as fast as possible, to take every shortcut, to not fund safety research, to not do security, to not care about rising energy prices, to not care about job loss, and just to race to get there first, that is their incentive. That tells you which world we're going to get. There is no arguing with that. And so if everybody just saw that clearly, we'd say, okay, great, let's not do that. Let's not have that incentive, which starts with culture, public clarity that we say no to that bad outcome, to that path. And then with that clarity, what are the other solutions that we want? We can have narrow AI tutors that are non-anthropomorphic, that are not trying to be your best friend, that are not trying to be therapists at the same time they're helping you with your homework. More like Khan Academy, which does those things. So you can have carefully designed different kinds of AI tutors that are doing it the right way. You can have AI therapists that are not trying to say, tell me your most intimate thoughts and let me separate you from your mother, and instead do very limited kinds of therapy that are not screwing with your attachment. So if I do cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm not screwing with your attachment system. We can have mandatory testing. Currently, the companies are not mandated to do that safety testing. We can have common safety standards that they all do. We can have common transparency measures so that the public and the world's leading governments know what's going on inside these AI labs, especially before this recursive self-improvement threshold. So that if we need to negotiate treaties between the largest countries on this, they will have the information that they need to make that possible. We can have stronger whistleblower protections so that if you're a whistleblower and currently your incentives are, I would lose all of my stock options if I told the world the truth, and those stock options are going up every day, we can empower whistleblowers with ways of sharing that information that don't risk losing their stock options. So there's a whole bunch, and we can have, instead of building general, inscrutable, autonomous, like dangerous AI that we don't know how to control, that blackmails people and is self-aware and copies its own code, we can build narrow AI systems that are about actually applied to the things that we want more of. So, making stronger and more efficient agriculture, better manufacturing, better educational services that would actually boost those areas of our economy without creating this risk that we don't know how to control. So there's a totally different way to do this if we were crystal clear that the current path is unacceptable.
In the case of social media, we all get sucked in because, now I can video call or speak to my grandmother in Australia, and that's amazing. But then, you wait long enough, my grandmother in Australia is like a conspiracy theorist Nazi who has been sucked into some algorithm. So that's like the long-term disconnect or downside that takes time.
And the same is almost happening with AI.
This is what I mean. I'm like, is it going to take some very big adverse effect for us to suddenly get serious about this? Because right now everybody's loving the fact that they've got a spell check in their pocket.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's going to be the moment, because we can have these conversations and they feel a bit too theoretical potentially to some people.
Let's not make it theoretical then, because it's so important that it's just all crystal clear and here right now. But that is the challenge you're talking about, is that we have to make a choice to go on a different path before we get to the outcome of this path. Because with AI, it's an exponential. So you either act too early or too late, but it's happening so quickly. You don't want to wait until the last moment to act. And so I thought you were going to go in the direction where you talked about grandma, getting sucked into conspiracies on social media. The longer we wait with AI, it is part of the AI psychosis phenomenon is it's driving AI cults and AI religions, where people feel that the actual way out of this is to protect the AI and that the AI is going to solve all of our problems. There's some people who believe that, by the way, that the best way out of this is that AI will run the world and run humanity because we're so bad at governing it ourselves.
I have seen this argument a few times. I've actually been to one particular village where the village now has an AI mayor.
Right.
Well, then at least that's what they told me.
Yep. I mean, you're going to see this, AI CEOs, AI board members, AI mayors. And so what would it take for this to not feel theoretical?
Honestly?
Yeah. You were kind of referred to a catastrophe, some kind of adverse event.
There's a phrase, isn't there? The phrase that I heard many years ago, which I've repeated a few times, is change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of making a change.
That's right.
And in this context, it would mean that until people feel a certain amount of pain, then they may not have the escape energy to create the change, to protest, to march in the streets, to advocate for all the things we're saying.
And I think as you're referring to, there are probably people you and I both know who, and I think a lot of people in the industry believe that it won't be until there's a catastrophe that we will actually choose another path.
Yeah.
I'm here because I don't want us to make that choice. Meaning I don't want us to wait for that.
I don't want us to make that choice either, but do you not think that's how humans operate?
It is. So that is the fundamental issue here, is that E.O. Wilson, this Harvard sociobiologist, said the fundamental problem of humanity is we have Paleolithic brains and emotions. We have medieval institutions that operate at a medieval clock rate, and we have godlike technology that's moving at now 21st to 24th century speed when AI self-improves. And we can't depend, our Paleolithic brains need to feel pain now for us to act. What happened with social media is we could have acted if we saw the incentive clearly. It was all clear. We could have just said, oh, this is going to head to a bad future. Let's change the incentive now. And imagine we had done that and you rewind the last 15 years and you did not run all of society through this logic, this perverse logic of maximizing addiction, loneliness, engagement, personalized information that amplifies sensational, outrageous content that drives division. You would have ended up in a totally different elections, totally different culture, totally different children's health, just by changing that incentive early. So the invitation here is that we have to put on sort of our far-sighted glasses and make a choice before we go down this road. And I'm wondering, what will it take for us to do that? Because to me, it's just clarity. If you have clarity about a current path that no one wants, we choose the other one.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.